talk about is the way you probably feel right now. You know there are a lot of resources out there. There are podcasts, there are blogs, there are MP3 recordings, and it feels like you're trying to drink from a fire hose. You've got this massive amount of information and you're trying to make something usable out of it. So I'm going to talk a little bit philosophically about this. Again, I have nothing to disclose commercially. I take no money from drug companies. My only disclosures, I guess, are educational ones, in that I have a couple of websites, and I'm going to tell you about the websites as we go on here. I love this quote: "Prediction is hard, especially about the future." That's by a famous New York philosopher, Lawrence Barra. Baseball fans will understand. Predicting the future is neither a science nor an art. Predicting the future is a sport. As in all sports activities, the players are subject to spectators' criticism and second guessing. Who's read The Black Swan? Talib's book. What does that tell you about predicting the future? Forget it. You can't. There is no possible way you can predict the future. Absolutely none. Naturally conservative, we are bewildered by the rapidity of a forced progress and change. We have outrun an educational system framed in simpler days and for simpler conditions. Sound familiar? The pressure comes hard enough upon the teacher, but far harder upon the taught, who suffer in 100 different ways. As is my custom, I always like to put a William Osler quote into a talk. This is William Osler, 1913, a lecture that he gave at St. George's Hospital 100 years ago, already saying that the teaching methods were outmoded that were being used to teach medical students. And here's another: the educational sequence from pre-medical education to retirement should be looked upon broadly as a single problem. It is not a succession of isolated and unrelated experiences. It is a continuum from when we start learning in medical school right up to where I am right now, 47 years of emergency medicine, and still learning things. I learned as many things this morning as you did, I'm sure, at the sessions. Oh, by the way, this quote is from 1932. So that's more than 70 years ago. Okay, why haven't we done this? Well, for one thing, we didn't have the tools. For another thing, attempts to predict the future are always futile, because remember, the difference between fiction and reality is that fiction has to make sense. You would not buy fiction if it didn't make sense. You wouldn't read fiction. Reality doesn't have to make sense. It just is. It just happens. Who could have predicted 20 years ago internet, smartphones, electronic medical records, compact imaging tools, ultrasound machines that you slip in your pocket or you put on your belt, or right now on the verge of attaching a probe to your iPhone and using your iPhone as an ultrasound? The stethoscope, I love my stethoscope. My stethoscope's older than half the people in this room. I bought it in 1979. But I know my stethoscope is an obsolete instrument. And medical education is starting to realize this too. There was a medical school in the United States that at the white coat ceremony last year did not give their new medical students a stethoscope. They gave a team of 4 medical students an ultrasound machine. And those medical students are going to be using the ultrasound machine through their 4 years of medical education. And they're going to be a whole lot smarter than I am. And they're going to be a whole lot better at physical diagnosis than I am with my stethoscope and my 47 years experience. And I know this. I understand this. I am given credit for this quote. This is not my quote. I wish I knew where I heard it, because I'm the one who has gotten credit for it. But if you want to know how we practiced medicine 5 years ago, read a textbook. You want to know how we practiced 2 years ago? Read a journal article. You want to know how we practice now? You go to a conference like this, where people have sifted through the information and distilled it and give it to you in a manner that's usable. You go to a conference without usable information on how to take care of sick people, you have wasted your money. But if you want to know how we're going to practice in the future, you listen to the conversations in the hallways and you use phone. Free, open access medical education. The concept has been around for a while. Too close to the speaker. The concept has been around for a while. The term only came into being a little more than a year ago at the ICEM meeting in Dublin, Ireland. Mike Cadogan and a handful of other people over tankards of Guinness. I can't say that I was present at the creation, but I was present during the creation and learned about it a couple of hours later. I wasn't at the meeting where they came up with this concept. But this is something I've believed in all along. I am a huge fan of open access education. I think it really is the best way to educate adults. It meshes nicely with adult learning theory. You're familiar with the difference between pedagogy. Pedagogy is me standing here talking to you. Pedagogy, you are children. I am the adult. I am teaching children. Andragogy is adult education principles. And beyond that is what's called hudagogy. Now, I'm in a special category of gerontogogy. Above 65, believe it or not, there's virtually no literature on how people over the age 65 learn. Believe me, I've looked for it. It's not there. But we have to adopt also. I mean, I admit it, my mind's not as sharp as it was. My skills are not as sharp as they once were. It's just the natural process of aging. There's virtually no information out there on how older people learn. And yet, I think everyone in this room really wants to practice emergency medicine a really long time. You probably want to practice beyond the point when you're 65 if you're still capable of doing it, because it's such a terrific job. It's the best job in the world. The beauty of open access education is the asynchronous learning. We work weekends, we work nights, and we are not the traditional Monday through Friday 9 to 5 physician who can plan to have their grand rounds at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday morning or go to the weekend conference at the Hilton in Baltimore. You know, we are just all over the map because somebody's got to be there to take care of sick people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So asynchronous learning works beautifully for us. It also helps that we can schedule our own asynchronous learning because, as you probably are aware, we have sort of a short attention span. And it's easier for us to get into something to learn at our speed than it is to sit here for a half hour or an hour and a half at a time and have somebody talk to you. So this is just such a beautiful idea, and it is so perfect for emergency medicine. It is just so perfect for emergency medicine. We take responsibility for our own learning. And in doing so, we develop the skills we need for lifelong learning beyond the walls of the lecture hall. Different resources. Okay. We have different resources. We have what I call reusable learning objects. I think of them sort of like Legos for the brain. That, for instance, if there's a really good movie out there on how to do a femoral nerve block, that movie can be used when you're talking about fractures. That same movie can be used when you're talking about orthopedics. When you're talking about geriatrics. That same movie can be used when you're talking about regional nerve blocks. So these reusable learning objects are all online, and we have to be able to access them easily and readily when we need them. I don't remember exactly which way I'm going with this. I'm heading towards a slide where I talk about why emergency medicine is so different from other specialties. And this is what I call the Coltrane analogy. I am a huge music nut. And I actually had to become an ER doc to support my music habit. I'd much rather be a jazz disc jockey, but there's no money in it. John Coltrane, you know the name. If you don't know the music, I just invite you to listen to it. John Coltrane not only changed music, he changed expectations of what music should be. We are the John Coltrane of medicine. We have not only changed medicine, we have changed expectations. We have changed patients' expectations of what medicine should be. Until there was an emergency medicine, people did not expect expert care 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They did not expect instant access to CT scans or to MRIs. And yet, because of emergency medicine, we have totally changed the way medicine is practiced. The rest of medicine has not caught up with us yet. Hospitals still want to function on a Monday through Friday, 9 through 5 schedule. They cannot do this anymore. And the reason they cannot is because what we have done with emergency medicine. Now, getting back to phone, getting back to the free open access medical education. You've found some of the sites. You've found some of the podcasts. They're out there. The life in the fast lane from Australia is still a very, very good place to go every Monday to see what's new in the world of phone. I don't have a slide for this, but the discussion came up yesterday. Why is Australia so far ahead of the United States in this? And that's easy. It's because in Australia, it's a young specialty and it's young people running it. Old fogies like me, for the most part, I mean, I admit I'm an exception to the rule in getting into this free open access movement. But most old fogies like me are threatened by the whole open access movement. And I don't remember whose quote it is, but he said, paradigm shifts occur one funeral at a time. Whose quote is that, Terry?
It's Heisenberg.
Is it Heisenberg? Yeah. Somebody said, how does science change? And he said, one funeral at a time. As the old guys die out, the new people take over, the new ideas come in. And I completely recognize that. Do we actually have slides now? Yeah, I have no idea where we are. All right, where am I? Showing you just some of the platforms that are out there. Until about 2 months ago, this is what I thought an iPad was. I actually have a mini iPad now. And that's what I've been tapping away on over here. I've been tweeting. When I can get a signal, I wish the signal were solid here. It keeps fading in and out. Now, the joke is, this is my kitchen home phone, or at least it was. This is the home phone in my library. What's the joke about this? I don't have a cell phone. I don't have a cell phone. I don't have a television. I haven't had a television for years, never had a cell phone, don't want a cell phone. And yet I can stand here and tell you that I am one of the founders of the open access medical education movement. How is this possible? And you can see that it is possible. This is the way I feel most of the time anyway. Just double click on your Chrome icon. 3 questions. Are textbooks dead? Are traditional journals dying? And do they know it? I mentioned this as a filter. Part of the problem is not, it's like a bad lecturer. A bad lecturer is not someone who doesn't give you any information. It's somebody who gives you an encyclopedia of information without distilling it into something useful. Life in the fast lane is trying to distill things into something useful. It's trying to tell you about the new blogs, the new podcasts that are coming out there. And then the Global Medical Education Project, it's an individual thing. I admire Mike Cadogan for doing this and Chris Nixon for doing this, but it's still just a little unwieldy. The way I look at all of these programs that are out there now, I see this mass of flotsam in the middle of the ocean. This pot. It's kind of like that. Did you see the oil painting out there of the old cars and the knives and forks on a plate? That's kind of the way I think of the free open access movement as it is right now. Is all of this information is out there in a giant pile. Great. How do we get to it? How do we use it as something on a day-to-day basis to help us take care of sick people? There's a lot of stuff. There is a lot of stuff. Look at this. Since 2011, emergency medicine and critical care blogs have grown from 67 to 130. That's almost doubled in 2 years. People involved in emergency medicine and critical care who think they have something useful to give you. That's a lot of people. Increased dissemination through Web 2.0, 77% of these people on Twitter, 42% on Facebook, 15% actually have a media account, such as YouTube or video. Larry Mellick, Al Sacchetti. A lot of these people are doing procedure videos, and they're making them available. You just got to know how to find them. You got to know how to look for them. The good news is 94% of these, you can get in touch with the person who's doing it. They're not anonymous anymore. People are out there telling you who they are. 17 countries, 75 in the United States. That looks impressive. Don't be impressed. The best stuff's coming out of Australia. It really is. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff coming out of the United States, don't get me wrong. But Australia, Canada, UK, especially the St. Evelyn group out of Manchester. But keep looking. Germany, Italy, Spain, Ireland, Scandinavia. I don't have Poland up there. Poland also. All of this is free. All of this is available for whomever wants it, whoever is self-motivated to learn. Why not? I'm sorry, when I develop a talk, if I develop a 1-hour talk, it takes me somewhere between 30 and 40 hours to put that talk together. Why in the world would I isolate the use of that talk to a group of 80 people in a room? Take the slides, please. And if the talk is something that you can listen to and learn from, record me. And if you don't record me, I'm going to record me. And I'm going to put it on a site where you can download me. It just makes sense. If we spend this much time developing educational material, share it so the next 17 people don't have to go back and do exactly the same thing that you've done. People can make changes in it. That's fine. I have no problem with that. Every set of slides that I've ever done is available for whomever wants them because I know the slides are not my talk. I give my talk. I use the slides as a step-off point, but the slides are just a bunch of slides, and you're more than welcome to my slides of any talk I have ever given. Did you go into medicine to help others? Of course, we all said that. Why, yes, I want to go into medicine so I can help others. We said that when we interviewed at medical school. We said that when we interviewed at the graduate training programs. What's a better way to help others than to teach people how to take care of others? It's indirect. It's not, it's not the direct satisfaction of going to a village in Botswana and giving smallpox. Well, we don't do smallpox anymore, but giving yellow fever immunizations. But the effect is absolutely amazing. It never ceases to amaze me. My website, freeemergencytalks.net, has more than 2,100 MP3s that I've gathered from all over the world. And they're out there for whoever wants them. And I hear very little until I go to a meeting like this, or I was in Marseille, France last week, and somebody came up to me from Slovenia and said, "You have absolutely no idea how much of our education in emergency medicine in Slovenia is taken from your website." or even in the United States. I had somebody rotating with me last weekend. Yeah, I still pull clinical shifts. He was from an osteopathic program that did not have an emergency medicine department. He said, you probably don't realize that your website is essentially our education in emergency medicine. Now, that's a wonderful thing to hear, but it's just the easiest thing in the world to do, to get this stuff out there for people. And then, you want a quick, easy way to establish an international reputation. 3 years ago, who'd heard of Scott Weingart? And now Scott Weingart is one of the top emergency medicine critical care names in the world. We're developing new areas of expertise that we need to learn about. Resuscitation is sort of ours by default. Geriatric emergency medicine, graying of the population. Each specialty needs experts in managing complicated patients on an accelerated pathway over hours, not days. Who takes better care of people with status asthmaticus, us or pulmonologists? We do. Who takes better care of people with unstable angina? We do. Sepsis, us. Those are 3 different specialties. But they need the people who are capable to take care of their patients in the first few hours. A lot of people, you realize, of course, a lot of people in the hospital have no idea how sick these people are when they come in. We stabilize them and put a little ribbon on them before we send them upstairs. It's very rare that I actually can send an unstable patient or want to send an unstable patient upstairs. So this is our area of specialty. Pediatric emergency medicine. Wonderful quote. The last thing a sick kid needs is a pediatrician. Who said that? I just saw Judy walk in. Judy, who said that? Peter Rosen. Peter Rosen said the last thing a sick kid needs is a pediatrician. Emergency radiology. You got a perfect example this morning. I love it. These slides were made before I came. But where are our radiology fellowships? Why don't we have them? Are they going to come out of radiology? No. They're not going to give it up. They're going to have to come out of emergency medicine. And somebody who works in a place which is friendly to emergency medicine to develop. So there's a lot of the future here. All right. And again, I've tried to cram way too much material into 30 minutes. I've already gotten the 5-minute mark. I love this quote from Scott Weingart. Up to date is a beautiful resource, but we're getting dumb as a result of just-in-time learning. I tell you now, if you're near the beginning of your career, you must read a textbook from cover to cover. There's just no way around that. You have to read a textbook from cover to cover. Beyond that, most of what you learn can come from this free open access movement. Hey, do me a favor, just type in the number 62 and hit enter. No. Well, you could have done it that way too. Okay. Trying to teach him a shortcut. Now, I kind of mentioned this morning. I'm painting the picture of foam as something ideal, and I love the whole concept of foam. There are many things foam cannot do, and you have to realize this. Foam can never, ever replace experienced clinicians. It cannot teach us the humility of working through a difficult problem with minimal information. These are things we have to learn by observing experienced people do and then coming up with our own way of doing these things. Motivation is a precondition to learning. If you are not a motivated learner, get out of emergency medicine now because you are going to be run over. This is a specialty that requires constant learning, and that's not going to change anytime in the future. Unmotivated learners waste instructors' time, and I think they should be encouraged to change careers. Go to something where things rarely change, like dermatology. Good clinicians listen carefully to patients. Good teachers listen carefully to learners and use meta-analytical thinking. But understand, good clinicians and good teachers are not necessarily the same person. Somebody can be a superb clinician and you can learn a lot from him or her, but they may not be a good traditional teacher standing in front of a group, trying to lecture, or doing a flipped classroom. We didn't even have time to talk about flipped classroom. With foam, you can't touch patients. You can't perform a physical exam. These are important things. We need to be doing these things. Two demons haunt clinicians, chance and fallibility. And here's another quote from Osler that makes so much sense. Medicine is a science of uncertainty and an art of probability. You've heard about the science and the art of medicine. This is a better definition, I think. The science is uncertainty. We've already heard today about 50% of the medical literature is wrong. About 50% of what we're doing is wrong. Hard to manage uncertainty without seeing examples of how people manage uncertainty. This is the hard stuff to teach. This, I doubt, can be done through foam. And I think you know this intuitively also. These are not things you're going to be able to pick up from going to a podcast or a blog. Prioritizing treatment, communication skills, collaboration, lifelong learning, etc. I mentioned this morning. Here's the exact quote. Example is not the main thing in influencing others. It is the only thing. And I think intuitively you know this. So again, we go to Osler. Osler said, "He who studies medicine without books sails an uncharted sea. He who studies medicine without patience does not go to sea at all." I would add to that, he who learns medicine without having practiced and mentors does not really learn medicine. They just learn a whole lot of facts, which is definitely not medicine. So after spending 20 minutes pushing foam, I'm showing you the downside. These are the things that cannot be taught through open access education. I didn't get to mention I mentioned free emergency talks. I want to mention one other website and then I'm done. And that is wikedm.org, WIKEM.org. It's a two-pronged project right now. Part one is putting a free emergency medicine textbook online in a wiki format so people can go in and make changes as they see fit. Part two is my part, and that's the Global Curriculum Project. The idea is we're trying to sort through all of this stuff that's out there and put it in a catalog format based on the core curriculum of the American Board of Emergency Medicine. We chose that simply because it seemed to be simple and complete. It's already starting up. If you go to WIKEM.org and go to the Global Curriculum Project, this is a continuous process. You are invited to contribute whatever you want. It's a wiki. It doesn't take long to learn how to use the language. If you find a really good online article free, please add it to the wiki. If you see a procedure video that you really like, please add it to the wiki. Anyway, my email address, that's my Twitter account, @JoeLex5. I don't know who 1 through 4 are. You're welcome to email me for copies of the complete set of slides if you want them for any of the articles that I referenced here. And I'm a minute over, I'm sorry. Okay, you better not take questions then.
Anyone have any questions? If anybody, Adam?